Welcome to In My Own Words podcast.
I never took a straight path nowhere.
And I'm your host, Benjamin Borges.
I'm hurt, dog. Don't ask me if I'm alright. Hell no.
Shit, that always gets me hyped.
On this podcast, I'm talking about sports, life, history, and motivation. Even though with the politics sometimes. Definitely gonna have some guests. No topic is off motherfucking limits.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me.
Yeah, you right, Will. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the In My Own Words podcast first episode. This one's going to be on me, man. Just going to be telling you some things that's been on my mind the last couple of days and actually the last couple of weeks and man, fuck that, for like the last couple of years, honestly. So this podcast is going to be how I hate the NFL. And before I lose all my male listeners, if y'all listening, I don't hate the game, obviously. I love football. I grew up playing it. You know, always pick up when I can with my boys and go out there and throw the ball around. I hate the league, man. Like, I hate how they have this uncontrolled power to do whatever the fuck they want. I guess it just goes to me hating people in authority. Like, people who just have this absolute power that you just could do whatever they want without any repercussions. So now, I don't know if you guys have been listening. So now the NFL wants to suspend Clay Matthews, Mike Neal, and a couple other players on the Packers because they won't talk to them. What type of bitch-ass shit is that? Like, they won't talk to you, so you're going to suspend them, take money away from them, take food off their table, giving these guys have earned millions of dollars. But we'll get into that later as to how that's really media portrayed and they don't get as much money as you believe. So think about it this way, right? Like, a lot of times, like, us as fans, we can't relate to them because we don't make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. But think about if your boss goes, listen, man, if you don't show up and talk to me about something that might not necessarily put you in trouble, I'm going to have to fire you. Think about that for a second, right? Like, let's say somebody, one of your coworkers says something about you completely unfounded, with no basis for anything. Said, oh, he sexually harassed one of the other coworkers for whatever reason. Just giving an example, right? That's not. Then your boss goes, oh, so I'm gonna need you to come and talk to me about this, even though that day you weren't even in school, even at work or anything like that. So, and you tell the boss, no, I don't have to talk to you about that because I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to talk about. They're like, well, if you don't want to talk to me in the next 10 days, you're going to be suspended or fired. So that's what's going on right now with these guys, right? So if you guys remember a couple months ago, I think before the Super Bowl, Al Jazeera put out a report that Peyton Manning and other players were on HGH. Now, Al Jazeera has since gone out of business, and the reporter who said it said, no, I'll take that back, recanted basically. So now the NFL wants these players to come up to them and talk to them about it. And the players are saying no. So they want to suspend them. For what? Conduct detrimental to the league. How is that conduct detrimental? Who's the one being detrimental? Now, these guys make money, yes, and that's where there's this disconnect with fans, right? Where fans just believe that they're entitled to tell these players how to live their lives and do whatever they want. Oh, why don't you just go talk to them? But think about it if it was your boss that was telling you to do that, right? Like, come and talk to me about something that there's absolutely no proof that you did. And if you don't come talk to me, I'm gonna fire you. You're gonna lose your livelihood, and I could suspend you indefinitely or fire you if I want to, right? Because us as regular employees, we don't get suspended, right? We get fired. Like, that's it. There's no, hey, come back and see me in a couple weeks and maybe we'll revisit this. No, it's, hey, sorry, you're gone. I'm not gonna keep you on shift. So now these players are just waiting. And then this goes back, I mean, you go back years. Last year with Adrian Peterson being suspended for disciplining his child. Yes, he hit him, and yes, there was bruises, but I grew up in a time when you could hit your child. And I don't remember what the kid was doing. I think he was like playing in the street or something like that. That got an ass whooping by anybody. I mean, I'm 32 years old. If I played in the street 20 years ago, my mom gonna beat my ass. My mom wasn't gonna get worried about repercussions from her boss because of how it looked. So the NFL is an image, but it's an image that doesn't care about the players, right? It just wants to discipline them after the fact with no proof. So, and then I won't even get into Tom Brady because, honestly, fuck Tom Brady. Sorry, Boston. I'm not going to get into that whole Deflategate shit. I really don't give a fuck about it. It's a fucking football. So, you have all these times when the NFL just does whatever they want with no repercussions, and then they just keep going because they make so much money. You got ESPN, you got Fox, and you got CBS paying them billions of dollars. So they'll report it for a couple of days, and then it'll go, oh, the player shouldn't be out after midnight. These are 25, most of the time, 22 to 35-year-old guys, right? You're telling grown men not to go have fun and party. So that devolves into a whole different thing, right? For the most part, players do the right thing and just stay their asses at home. But think about having millions of dollars, us as regular people having millions of dollars and not being able to go out, and there's restrictions on what you can do, right? So you can't do any of these things that you want to do. You can't go to a club because people might harass you. So you really don't have a life. So you're rich, but you're basically, I don't want to say like in prison, but you're like on house arrest, where you really can't go out and have fun, because you go out and have fun, you can get in trouble. Like there's situations in other leagues, like Jahlil Okafor for the Sixers, terrible team, terrible example, but he goes out and guys are talking shit to him and he knocks them out. Like that's something that's happened. I've gotten into fights growing up. That's just something that happens naturally. Like it's not something you try to do. You're not going out there looking for the problems. But if motherfuckers keep talking shit to you at some point it's not enough is enough, right? Like you're just not gonna stand there and take it. That's just not what happens. So then you move on to these points where you're rich, but since you're in the public eye, fans feel like they're entitled to tell you whatever they want. First of all, if somebody constantly criticizes me for me having a bad day of treating patients or relating it back to myself, because I've never been a professional player, you put them in these situations. Like at what point at some point they're gonna have to fight back. It's not gonna be a normal thing to tell a human being, hey, look, don't just go ahead and take all this criticism. Let me just talk shit to you as much as I can, and don't say nothing back, because then you might get suspended. Think about how powerless you feel in that point, right? That you have to just stand there and be bigger than everybody else. Think about how selfless, how small your ego has to be to listen to these fucks completely criticize everything you're doing always. And then you got the NFL backing the bitches up with the unfounded, like Al Jazeera with the unfounded reports saying that, oh, they did HGH or they did these other drugs. First of all, let's take a second. If you look at Peyton Manning's forehead, it clearly grew since he was at Tennessee. You could put a ruler to that shit. I guarantee you it grew at least 4.5 inches. Now, if HGH affects you that way, that's for you guys to determine. I'm not saying nothing. But his forehead is clearly 6 to 8 times larger than when he was at Tennessee. And fuck Peyton Manning too. We'll get into that a little later. So these are all situations that I don't understand, where the league can just do whatever they want, suspend players for whatever they want with no rules. Then Goodell just keeps getting more power. Now you have the courts backing them up, so the players feel completely powerless. So now you have reports coming out that players, if they saw Goodell, would want to punch him in the face. Understandable. The guy's a fucking bully. Like, these players get paid, and then let's get into that, right? So these players get paid millions of dollars, right? But if you take away the big time quarterbacks, right, like the Andrew Lucks, you got the Tony Romos, the Tom Brady's, so on and so forth, Cam Newtons, and then you have the defensive players, Von Millers, J.J. Watts. Besides those guys making millions of dollars, which isn't completely guaranteed, because it could be $140 million contract, but only 45 or 50 million of it is guaranteed. Given that's a shit ton of money, I'm not dismissing that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you take the average, right? Let's say there's 50. Everybody, if you guys know, there's 53 guys on a roster, on an NFL roster. So those salaries, the NFL made $7.3 billion last year. And that's going to grow continuously every year, because people watch more and more football, right? People play, you love the game. I love the game. I watch it every Sunday when I can. So $7.3 billion, like I was saying. There's 53 players on the team. There's 32 teams. But you go into that, right? The average salary is $1.9 million, right? So that's an incredible difference of amount of money. And then you go into the fact that the NFL refuses to pay their players or even acknowledge CTE. Yes, they have concussion protocols, but for years they refused to say that there was anything to do. Concussions had nothing to do with football. So now you had them settle 2 years ago $765 million for 18,000 players. You guys know how much everybody was like, oh man, the players got a lot of money. Do the math on that. $765 million for 18,000 former players. That's $42,000 a player. What does that pay? You guys have been to the hospital? That might pay for 2 hospital visits. These guys need constant CT scans, probably constant care around the clock if they're older and lost their bodily functions because their brain doesn't function properly. So I don't get it, where us as fans can care about these teams, right? Because you rarely care about the player. You care more about the team, and that's where the NFL has gotten you, where these players are just a revolving door of who gives a fuck. They're not going to be there that long for you to build an emotional thing. But these players have lives after the fact. And when they're 30, 40, 50 years old, they're not going to have the same mental ability that they do that you have. And that's just because they play the game. And that's the other argument, right? Like, oh, these players that play the game and they get paid millions of dollars, they should be happy. Right, but they're sacrificing their entire bodies. Where you, if you're at your job sitting at a desk, you might get arthritis in your hands. Imagine being 45 years old and having dementia, right? Or committing suicide and leaving your daughters or sons behind and a wife because you have no longer control of your brain. That's ridiculous, man. Where you could just discard these human beings because they played a game, but they might have given your team a good 10-6 or 11-5, or if you're lucky, a Super Bowl in your lifetime. But after the fact, you don't give a fuck about them, and then the NFL gives a fuck less about them because they made them hundreds of millions of dollars selling their jerseys and things like that. Where I don't even know if the players get the profit from that. The NFL makes all the money. So there's no winning for the players. The players don't make a profit, and then you get the argument of, oh, they need a better CBA, right? But then we get on the player side saying, oh, they should just be happy getting the money they get. The NFL pays the players the least out of anybody. Don't get me. The NBA, the 15th guy on the bench makes more money than most players in the NFL. The guy who never sees a minute can make more than a starting linebacker. Think about that for a second. The guy that could play outside linebacker for a Super Bowl team makes less than JaVale McGee. Yeah, JaVale McGee is a terrible... I don't even know if he's in the league anymore. A good example because I really don't give a fuck. Just think about that for a second. So this isn't just about the NFL. It's about governing bodies as a whole. The NCAA is another piece of shit. They're a multi-billion-dollar company that uses their players... mostly black, but that's a whole different issue, right? That uses their players and refuses to they refuse to give them any incentives or any benefits. Oh, but they're student athletes, right? No, fuck you. They're not just students. They're athletes. They make money for the university. If they're a big time program, they bring money in while every other student costs that university money. So they pay for those other students. Oh, but they should be thankful because they're getting a free education. Yes, a free education is great, but most of these students have been passed on and passed over because they only played a sport. So they don't have most of them don't have the functional ability to become a good person outside of the game. That's all they know. They just, oh, you can run the ball, oh, you can catch the ball, oh, you can shoot the ball. Keep passing them, and coaches just keep passing them. So they never have that help. And there's few instances, like you have the Jamal Mashburns, who's made more money outside of the NBA because he bought a bunch of franchises of Outback Steakhouse, which I love. Shout out to the tacos. Right, so they make these moments. There's these few instances where yes, the players can make it past that, but most of them end up broke. I'm sure most of you have seen that 30 for 30. It's some sad shit. They see that money, but then they have all these hangers on and all these things. These players aren't set up to succeed. They're set up to fail because once they're done with you in the machine of the NCAA or the NFL or the UFC. Major League Baseball, they pay all their players a ridiculous amount of money. I don't get it because it's just I'm at a loss for words for that one. It just doesn't make sense to me, man. So this is just me ranting, as you could tell, about governing bodies. I have a problem with authority, man. I could tell you the moment it started. I was 12 years old. I was playing in a YMCA league for basketball. My team was sick. I was a center because I was taller than everybody else. That's really it. And I had a terrible haircut. That's neither here nor there. But I was playing center, and we were getting cheated out of the game, right? Because we didn't have enough referees. It was a tournament. It was like 40 teams. It was a stupid Saturday. It was like 40 teams in Hialeah, where I grew up, and the referees was one of the parents for the other team. So I'm getting hacked, and I mean really foul, not like acting James Harden foul. Like I was really getting hit. Like I had a busted lip. I was 12 years old. Somebody was gonna pay. The ref wasn't calling anything. My mom went straight gangster. My mom took off, I'm like, seeing from a movie, my mom took off her earrings, was ready to go. She took off her earrings, took out her sandals, and was ready to fight this guy that was calling just terrible plays. So from that moment, I was like, you know what? Fuck authority. After that, I could never really play organized sports again because I knew there was always that human element, right? And then you put human element on top with money, it's just, there's always going to get people that are fucked over, and it's more times than not, it's the players. And when the players stand up for themselves, you want to complain. You want to say, oh, the players should just be thankful. Oh, this and that. But why don't you look at the owners? Why don't you look at the GMs who just use these players and throw them out and don't give a fuck about them? So don't give me this shit that you love the sport or you love the NFL or you love football when you don't give a shit about the players which give you that love. They're the seed, they're the foundation for the love you have of the sport. They're none of this you don't, because nobody has a Robert Kraft jersey, right? But you have a Tom Brady. Nobody, give me another owner, the fucking guy from the Ravens. Nobody has their jerseys. You're gonna have an Art Modell. Nobody has their jerseys. Nobody, right? But you'll have a Ray Lewis. You'll have a Ed Reed. You'll have, if you're sorry enough, Ryan Tannehill. You know, you'll have these jerseys but you don't care about the owners. They're the one making billions and billions of dollars off of you. The players don't make that money. They get paid. That gets disseminated down to the players. But once the players, 2-3 years down the line, once the player's career is over, they're out of the window, and the team might sue them to get their money back. So it becomes this whole cycle where you're angry at the players because they make millions of dollars, but then the owners make billions, but you don't complain about them. Why is that? Because we're afraid of that power, right? Like we're afraid to speak truth to that power. So we just let the NFL, the UFC, which let me get into that real quick. So the UFC, when you complain, when you guys want to talk about, oh, the UFC fighters get paid a lot, really take a look at that, right? I was just listening to Brendan Schaub and Brian Cannon from Fighter and the Kid, one of my favorite podcasts. And Brendan Schaub was saying that he used to get paid $12,000 a fight to show up and $12,000 if he wins. Think about it. You train 3 months. You made $24,000. Right? That sounds like a good amount of money. But imagine if I think he got knocked out in that fight. He couldn't fight for 6 months. So he just made that $24,000 for 6 months. For 9 months, because dating back to the 3 months. And then you add in this Reebok deal where they can't get their their sponsors anymore. Sorry about that, guys. Got a little lump in my throat. Where they can't get their sponsors anymore, so they're losing that money. So you get $24,000 for maybe the year, but you get knocked out, and then you have a concussion, and that leads to several other injuries. You could get your arm broken in a fight. Yes, the top guys like the McGregors, the Nate Diaz, the John Jones when he's not on coke, and the boring ass Daniel Cormier. I don't like the guy, man. I'm sorry. I don't know why I don't like it. I always get into an argument with my wife because she's a big DC fan. I'm not so much, but that's whatever. So you have these fighters that don't get paid shit, but they have to always perform for you. They have to give you their best effort to try to get the next fight. But the next fight might not be that much money, right? The next fight could only be $5,000 to show and $5,000 to fight. That's not that much money if you spend. How do you pay? Think about that. After you pay your coaches, your training camp, if you have your own camp, after you pay your coaches, your nutritionist, your doctor, how much money do you have left over? And you have wife and kids. How does that disseminate back to them? Where's the fun? Like, you're literally doing it for the love of it. Yes, the money in the NFL and the NBA, I'm not even going to talk about it because that money's guaranteed. Look at the Knicks with Allen Houston. They paid him 6 years after he couldn't play anymore because his knees died. Like, that's a different animal. I'm not talking about them. They've gotten it better since David Stern left. Huge shout out to Adam Silver. Now, what the NFL is doing is criminal, man. And the NCAA, what football in America is doing to these kids and just ravishing their bodies before they're 30 years old is criminal. And the fact that they don't have health benefits, they don't get taken care of the way they should because they played a game. Yes, they played a game, but they played a game for the love of it. How many of you guys dedicated your entire life to one sport and at 25 it's over? Think about that, right? Like, you dedicate since you were 6 years old or 4 or 5, depending on your weight, and you play Optimus football. You had that time to your 25, and that's it. Everything you've ever been about is over. If you have an injury, you tear an Achilles, you dislocate a shoulder, you destroy your whole knee. Any of those things, yes, players come back from it, but you're damaged goods. Your contracts might not be the same, but you don't have any other things. So some of that onus falls on the players. Some of that onus falls on the players not dedicating themselves in the classroom and building that foundation so you have an outside life. Like, you have Philip Buchanan, who's becoming obviously, as you guys know, I'm a huge guy. Like, you have Philip Buchanan, who is dedicating himself to be a tech guy, and there's ways to do it, right? Like, you can find your avenues. They find their ways, but when they're playing that game, there's no safety net. You're paying that for the little bit amount of money guaranteed if you're not those superstar players, and then after that you're kind of screwed. This has been my rant.